Hey, deserving listeners, Desperately Seeking Soulmate, which is a documentary about the Twin Flames organization. Let's watch.
So I became a distant father. It was very, very difficult. And when her mom died from cancer, Megan was about 15.
Having lost her mom, having had challenging relationships with her biological family.
Okay, so they're going into more of their history, and they interviewed some of Jeff's childhood friends, and I noticed some patterns that are notable. It's hard to know, obviously, because I can't assess people from afar like this, but it is a red flag, I suppose, that for Jeff, when he was young, he had aspirations of what his friend said was, regarding career, Jeff didn't really have a career in mind, but he had a result of career in mind. He wanted to be special and make a lot of money. That wasn't what he was saying exactly, but it was along those lines. And that is, it's not. There's nothing wrong with someone saying that they want to be special or they want to do great things or they want to make a lot of money. But it is a bit of a red flag or a possible indication of someone who suffers from narcissism or something related to that, meaning that when they were young, they were treated in a way that resulted in them feeling as though attachments are not secure for them, that they can't depend on other people and they have to depend on themselves, and that if they manage to make themselves special enough, then maybe people will love them and stay with them. Or if they can make themselves special enough, then they don't need other people. That's one way of looking at narcissism. So, it's possible. It's hard to know. I'll just say that. And then for Shalia, they're reviewing how dad became a distant dad, then mom died when she was 15, when Shalia was 15. And who knows what the relationships were like before that. Those two events don't usually amount to anything in terms of attachment and security in and of itself. But, you can have a divorce and have the kids grow up with secure attachment. You can have one of the parents die when one of the kids is 15 and have the kid grow up with secure attachment. I mean, it's going to be painful, but typically attachment issues and personality issues are developed very early in life and then are reinforced later on. But anyway, so another aspect to this. Well, anyway, I think they're getting at something.
She was always looking for the other side of herself.
I became aware of twin flames probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was that it's common for people with narcissism that when they fall in love, because the way that people talk about people with narcissism, somewhere on the spectrum of the personality disorder, is that they are psychopathic, they use other people, they're self-centered, and certainly they can look that way. But deep down, they deeply, deeply long for an attachment, and their own defenses get in the way. That's one way of looking at narcissism. And so when the narcissistic individual, because they developed the narcissistic defensive structure when they were young because they were treated in a way, usually as a result of neglect, they might have been paid attention to some extent, but there's a general emotional neglect. Sometimes it can be abandonment, something that interfered with the child's sense that they could depend on their attachment figures. It could have been the dad leaving. It probably wasn't just that anyway. And I'm not diagnosing, who knows. But for people who develop narcissism, when they fall in love, they, even if just one of the individuals has narcissism, it will be a very intense love for a variety of reasons. One is because they have never had closeness and they've always longed for it, right? So when they finally get it, in a similar way for someone with borderline or histrionic, when they finally get it, it is just like, oh my God, this feels amazing because they have been deprived of it so long and they probably don't have it anywhere else in their life. It could literally be the first time that they've ever felt safe and close and loved by somebody. That's, it's very intoxicating even for securely attached individuals. Can you imagine for someone that was deprived of it their whole life? So it's very intense for that reason. It's also very intense for narcissistic people because of the way they frame the world. They think that they're superior and that they're special. And as they're experiencing the subjective feelings of being in love and obsession and being compulsively drawn to someone, they filter all that through their narcissistic lens, and they frame it as this is something that's above humanity. This is spiritual. This is, our relationship is closer than any other romantic relationship that has ever existed. Or at the very least, our love is stronger than most relationships that I see around me. My friends that are married, we're closer than that. Our love is deeper than my parents. Everybody is below, which may or may not be true. And particularly in the beginning of a relationship, because that's when all those special feelings are happening. So for people who aren't narcissistic, they will also feel that intense love, but they won't interpret it as, and therefore I'm special, therefore our love is elevated to the stars. They don't even necessarily ask that question, but if they were, they'd be like, well, I imagine a lot of people feel this feeling, because they don't need to be elevated and superior. So that would lend itself toward this idea of elevating love in relationships and their love in relationships to this spiritual, divine, fated realm, right? We're fated to be together because our love is so special. It's not just run of the mill. It's not just a regular falling in love. This is a twin flame. This is, magical experience. And so for Shalia, and it seems that she introduced the topic maybe to Jeff. Jeff runs with it, and then they start to do this blog, and they're attracting all these people, and they're elevating their relationship. And you can imagine a lot of people praising them because they're on social media, and also because of the way that they are, that they're like, oh my God, I want what you have. And then the spark goes off. Oh, maybe this is my path to that outcome that I wanted. I wanted power and prestige and money and to be superior. And I have all this attention. Maybe I can turn this into a business.
And that's when I knew in my heart of hearts that was what I wanted. I desired a soul to soul union.
I know she believed that Jeff is her twin flame.
And that's another part of the narcissistic, borderline histrionic realm, in that the way that it feels once they do find love is so intense. Because when we are 12 months old, 18 months old, 2 years old, the love that we have for our caregivers is so intense. The eye contact and the cuddling, the amount of physical contact that an infant has with their parent when things are going well, the amount of eye contact, the amount of attunement, and the amount of care that you're given from your parents, it's all encompassing. They're there as you're falling asleep. They're there when you wake up. They're feeding you food. They are changing your diapers. They're picking you up and taking you to places, and they're wearing you in backpacks. And when you cry, they're there. I mean, I'm talking about when things are going well. And it's wonderful. And it's just a slow slide away from that for the rest of our lives. The idea goes is that if we get enough of that in that phase, then we're satiated such that we don't need as much moving forward. We still need it, but just not as much. And therefore we can feel in balance. We can feel as though we're balanced with regards to attunement and love and closeness within regular adult closeness, which also can be very, very close, but just not nearly as close as it is when you're 12 months old. Whereas if you didn't get enough of that, something interfered with that for some reason when you're very, very young, you still long for that, and you still expect it. You still orient or filter your experiences through that. And when you finally fall in love, you could be 25, 35, 45, and you get that closeness, it'll be interpreted that way by the body. It'll be subconscious, but it'll be like, I finally have that thing that I wanted that I lost out on when I was 18 months. Okay, let's be together all the time. And oh my God, this feels so good. You're the best. You're idealized. You're the most wonderful person on the earth. Of course, splitting and blah, blah, blah. I could go down that road. But this is not my idea. This is well known within psychodynamic theory that's been going back for over 100 years, and particularly within attachment theory that goes back 60, 70 years. Anyway, so when these individuals fall in love, they don't just have the regular infatuation, which is normal. Their infatuation is so intense and so all-encompassing. And of course, if things go well, then great. But if they don't go well, then the pain is even greater, right? and the need to hold on to it, and maybe even the orientation towards stalking, right? Like a 12-month-old child, say that you have a 12-month-old, or say a 2.5-year-old is dropped off at the preschool, at a daycare, and the parent is walking away. The child will, sometimes, not always, but they will do almost anything to get back to their parent. They might push away the daycare worker. They might try to open the door. They might cry and scream. Because, when we see a 2.5-year-old person doing that, we're like, well, yeah. Well, if you were mistreated or neglected or something went wrong at that age, you still have that within you, even though you're 35, 55, whatever, you're an adult. You have that longing and that perspective, that need and that entitlement, right? That you wouldn't call a 2.5-year-old child entitled, but, you could frame it that way. The 2.5-year-old child, the way they see the world, they feel entitled to be with the parents 24/7, even though the parents eventually have to go back to work or they have to go to the bathroom. For those of you who have young kids, it's like, can I please just go number 2 without you having to invade my space? But, it's because kids feel entitled. That's a good thing. You want them to feel that way. Doesn't mean you have to let them into the bathroom, but, And so if you were denied that, or something went wrong, it was complicated, you could be 35 years old, and when you're broken up with, you feel entitled to chase, to open the door of the daycare or open the door of their house and go inside and say, hey, you need to be with me, to demand and refuse to allow the other person to have a boundary. A lot of stalking behavior and harm and abuse, for that matter, physical abuse, coercion, is a result of that early childhood attachment disruption, according to theory and data and my own conceptualization. And so when you fall in love and you have all that intensity and you're narcissistic and you see everything is elevated, you are posting a lot of that because you're narcissistic, and there's all these people who are attracted to that, and you are oriented towards trying to, make a lot of money, and you're like, oh, here's an opportunity, I can use it. This documentary kind of lays that out, at least for me, well.
Okay. And he said, well, I found out that I have a gift. I can talk to people and I can draw out this mental trauma. I had my first client just last night. We had a great 20-minute session on Facebook Messenger, and I cured her of multiple sclerosis.
Okay. So this individual is saying that he was a roommate of Jeff, according to his memory, and who knows. He's claiming that Jeff said, I have a new idea for a business. I discovered that I have the power, I have a magical power to cure illnesses over the internet. We're hearing that Jeff believes that he cured that, and who knows. So in the beginning, and who knows about his memory, but when he first said, it's like, I have a business idea, I'm going to cure people's ailments, then that points at, because I've been wondering if he knows that he's scamming or if he literally believes the nonsense. There's some evidence in both directions. It's hard to tell, of course, and even if I had more evidence, I wouldn't really know, unless we had a statement from him. But even then, you wouldn't necessarily know because people could be lying. But there's some evidence that he knows that he's scamming. I mean, I guess there's a third option where there's a part of him that knows he's scamming, particularly in the beginning, but then he convinces himself of these superpowers. I don't know. But the fact that he led with this is a business, then that leads toward he knows it's a scam, because if you can literally cure anyone's ailments, business wouldn't be the first thing you would think about. You would think, I'm going to go down to the hospital and cure everybody, or I'm just going to wander the streets and cure everyone's ailments.
Told me that he had studied neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming is a form of hypnosis, and I know that he studied how to utilize that on people, and I think it was about demonstrating that he had control over us.
No. So where do I begin with neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis? In a nutshell, there are a lot of claims that proponents of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, and many claims that proponents of hypnosis will put forth that have been debunked by numerous studies. So there's that. The other thought I had was, well, of course he is interested in NLP because NLP is outside of psychology, outside of science. Most of it is pseudoscience. Some of it might be mildly supported by some data, but we wouldn't call that NLP. We would call that psychology, and they have just co-opted a bit of it. If you go online and look up NLP, it's a wide variety of folks claiming a wide variety of things. Hypnosis is similar. You can find people who will use hypnosis in the scientifically supported way and will make scientifically supported claims, meaning that hypnosis is not the way that people think it is typically, where you hypnotize someone and you can make them do anything, or you can get to deep, dark memories or secrets or something. That has never happened according to empirical science and probably never will. But hypnosis can be used to help people to relax. And when people are relaxed or perhaps in a different state, there's different hypotheses about different states of mind and the trance state. It's not like you're completely open to suggestion, but when you use these techniques of relaxation and concentration, people might be able to access parts of themselves, not like some magical thing like accessing more of their brain, because of course we use all of our brain. But the point is that there is some science, but so anecdotally, what I'll say is 99% of the stuff that people say about NLP and hypnosis is pseudoscientific, magical thinking, someone trying to scam somebody, that kind of thing, misinformation. And so that's what I'll say about that. And the NLP and the hypnosis world is very close to alternative medicine, which is very close to woo science, which is very close to spiritualism and new age. And, like you go to a new age bookstore, I'm guessing there's an NLP section and a hypnosis section. And by the way, neurolinguistic programming is often reduced online to one of its concepts, which has to do with eye movements, indicating certain, like I was just looking up here when I was saying that, and according to NLP, that definitely says something about how my brain was working. Like you can tell when people are lying or when they are, I don't know, there's just various different magical, pseudoscientific, nonsensical, unsupported claims about where your eyes move. There are some things that we can say in psychology about eye movement and cognition, but it's not like looking this way definitely indicates this. Also, I just want to state that every once in a while, I feel like I just need to sprinkle in science. And one of the things that I'll say is there is no way to detect if someone is lying or not. The lie detector test, the polygraph, experts on body language, no. We've studied it backwards and forwards for decades. There's many different methods of inquiry looking at this question. There's no ability to tell if someone else is lying. And as a subset of that, eye movements do not indicate if someone is lying or not.
We will not tolerate your resistance to us anymore. We're beyond that with you.
The mirror exercise was probably the most controlling of their techniques.
I'm upset at myself because I'm avoiding myself. Is there any truth to that statement?
So they're going over the mirroring technique again. And this documentary, I don't know if it's just the accumulation of all the data, but this documentary seems to give a better feel for the control and what it would feel like to be in these meetings. There's a lot of footage and a lot of people talking about it. And also, this documentary, I think, also makes it easier to empathize with people who got sucked in to this, to the group, in that in the beginning it started out as something that was benign, something that wasn't harmful seeming. And as members started to become more dedicated or numerous, then Jeff seemed to get angrier and more abusive with his language. They showed a number of clips like that. Then they started making money, and he started buying a lot of things. They started buying very expensive things, and they would flaunt it in their posts and in their classes. There's all these clips of him bragging about how expensive his cars are. He bought a new Corvette and a Porsche, and he bought an $11,000 bed. And there's just a long conversation. I mean, it's just astonishing that someone would do that because, even if you were thinking those things or saying it to people in your life, to think that it actually is a good idea to post on the internet. But as I say that, he currently still has, even after these documentaries, he still has extremely dedicated followers. So maybe that's, I'll just say there are certain politicians that when I would watch them try to get votes, I would look at these politicians, maybe one politician in particular, and I would say, that is never going to work. I mean, it's just blatant bragging and ridiculousness and hatred. That'll never work. It's so gross and unappealing. I mean, certainly some people will like this, but there's more subtle ways to say those things, or why are you even mentioning those things? And then they get elected. So what do I know? What appeals to me, and I'm not equating the followers, the victims, with that sort of thing. I'm just saying that I always am not a good gauge as to what is appealing to people or what moves people, right? So it's possible that the followers, and I guess, yeah, right. So in the document, I can't remember which documentary I was told this, maybe both, that they were pushing a lifestyle and a religion, right? Pretty quickly they were talking about God and, all that stuff. And they are saying, if you join our class and you follow this advice and you stick with us, not only will we guarantee you that you'll find your twin flame and you'll have a harmonious relationship, everything in life will come together for you. You will, I don't know if it was explicitly said, but I think it's implied, you'll make a lot of money. And there were some scenes where he was pressuring the followers to be employees, and he was, badgering them to do that sort of thing. And yeah, it's just, and then I a lot of the scenes, and I've heard some of the participants say that most of the members are women. And so you also have this misogynistic theme or sexist theme where you have a bunch of women who are indoctrinated into a society that tells them they're shit and nothing, and that they need a man to tell them what to do. And then they are attracted to this group because of the promises, or they're just looking for answers. They're lost. They're desperate for some kind of guidance or community. And at first, there's acceptance and love. And they also talked about how the members would all love bomb as well. Like, welcome to our group. And maybe it wasn't purposeful by the members, but it has that effect of love bombing, right? And then you have this invitation. Now you're locked in. You're like, oh my God, I found my home. And then you just start getting berated by this man over and over again. And he has all this money and power and all this, everyone's looking at him. And you just wonder if the victims would have been as susceptible to this if they weren't raised in a sexist culture. All right, well, let's adjourn there and tune in next time if you want to, when I continue watching the Amazon documentary. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.